Welcome back or welcome to the Surf Mastery Podcast, the podcast that helps passionate, lifelong surfers to catch more waves, surf with more speed, style, and grace, and gain wisdom and confidence in the water. Today's guest is a favorite of the show, and this will be his fifth appearance on this podcast. His first appearance was episode 41, and that was about nose riding and longboarding. Available on wherever you get your podcasts. I also just re-released that episode, that conversation on YouTube with footage of Devon surfing throughout it. So you can check that out on my YouTube channel. It's called How to Nose Ride with Devon Howard. He then appeared again in episode 70, or talking about mid-lengths. Again in episode 86, which was all about twin fins. And again, episode 100, which is all about style. And today we're going to be talking about art versus sport, a topic that's been in discussion the last few episodes, but excited to get Devon to weigh in on this. Also going to discuss the new CI Nose Rider from Channel Islands, a collaboration with one of the best longboard shapers in the world who shaped this one here, this Nose Rider, Wayne Rich. Plus many other things we'll discuss as well. There's also an article on the inertia which complements this episode and the previous couple as well. It's entitled, Is Surfing Art, Sport, or Something Else? So you can go to theinertia.com and check that recent article out. Link to that in the show notes, of course. Without further ado, I shall fade in my conversation with Devon Howard. So it's winter here in New Zealand, so it's just football. Once the football season finishes and the water gets warmer, we'll get back into surfing. I got the kids in swimming lessons every week, so just building their swimming fitness up.
Yeah, our kids are swimming now. They're pretty young, but we have a pool nearby, and to get them acquainted with the ocean, we've been getting them in swimming lessons just because the water's a little chilly here, as you know. So getting really young kids psyched on low 60 Fahrenheit water is rough.
Oh yeah. Swimming's important. Swimming, I mean, the confidence in the water, right, is the biggest thing. And one thing that surprised me, like my kids, we spend a lot of time at the beach in the summertime, and just their level of play, they don't care. They started off just messing around in the shore break, and then with a bodyboard, and then they jump on the front of my board, and there was no pressure from me. It was just like, we're at the beach, you guys do what you want. And then naturally they're like, oh, I want to try your board, Dad. And now they're all surfing.
That's great.
And they naturally, one of them in particular is like obsessed with it, but they don't care. It's like for them, surfing is not a sport at all. There's no pressure on performance, anything like that. And I think that's why they learn so well, and why they sort of there's no fear or shame or anxiety based around how they look in the water or anything. It's just pure fun. And two things surprise me on that is like, is how long it takes to learn. I've been doing this with them, like my 13-year-old, he's only really just starting to sort of get surfing, like starting to sort of turn up and down on the wave face. And we've been doing that since he was 4, you know. Obviously, there's far more gifted kids that pick it up really quick, and the natural athletes and their obsessed parents, and some kids are competing once they're 11. But I think for most kids, it takes so long to learn surfing, and I think just knowing that should take a lot of pressure off the adult learner who's listening to this.
Right.
It's like, give yourself a break, man. It takes a long time to learn surfing, and second of all, the fastest and best way to learn surfing is to kind of approach it like a kid in a way. And my theory is that part of that is, don't think of it as a sport per se. Think of it as more of like an art or a lifestyle. What are your thoughts on surfing in that regards? Is it a sport? Is it an art? Does it matter?
I've never thought of it as a sport, even though ironically, I worked for a sports league for a while at the World Surf League. You can't give a simple answer to that, because I think some aspects of surfing has become sport. If we tune into the World Surf League later this week, they'll be at Jeffreys Bay. The things that those surfers are doing, I think that's sport. I mean, it's high level athleticism, but it's mixed with art and dance, which is an interesting thing. I suppose in some ways skateboarding is, skateboarders they really value style in their sport. I think skateboarders do call it a sport, but these conversations always are fraught with pitfalls because I'm not my expertise isn't philosophy. I'm sure a really great thinker could pick this thing apart, but from my simple look at it, I always have felt surfing is it's just a personal expression, and it leans more toward art. It leans more toward dance. I know that sounds cheesy for some folks, but the type of surfing that interests me and I pursue, and a lot of my friends do, I think it is not really sport.
I agree with that 100%. I would go further and argue that even in the WSL competition, I think most of the sport, in air quotes, is around the tactics and getting the waves. But once the surf is on the wave, the ones who get scored the most are the most artistic.
Hmm.
Like whether you watch John with or without a jersey, it's
Yeah.
still very great. He's still dancing with the ocean.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's creative, and I think because it's spontaneous, I guess other sports are spontaneous, like a baseball game, any kind of balls comes flying at you, you have to react to it. There's not an exact plan, but you have practiced um, a lot to react to that and to physically grab something. Where a surfboard, you are catching something, you're catching the wave. That's like catching a ball, but then you've got this other dimension where now you have the it's a cliche, but the paintbrush. Um, and a lot of these surfers don't know what they're going to do when they get to their feet. I don't. I don't know if you do. I mean, you kind of have things that you are in your bag of tricks or your repertoire that you lean on, but you don't always know. There's a lot of spontaneous reaction to what's happening. So I think that's what art is. If you sit, I used to draw a lot when I was younger. You sit down and yeah, maybe you kind of have a game plan, but unless you're copying something, like you're looking at a still like a, model or a landscape, I suppose you're copying that. But if you are sitting down and not looking at anything and just going off pure feeling with no plan, um, that's artistry. And I think surfing's that way for a lot of people. For some people, it's just survival. They're not really planning anything out. If you're newer to surfing, you're just like, get to your feet, make the drop, get to the channel, and do it over again.
Mm. Yeah, I think a lot of things are like that. Like surfing, definitely one that sort of crosses the border between sport and art. I mean, you think of an Olympic competition, gymnastics, right? It's gymnastics
Yeah.
is essentially an art, even the judging itself is quite subjective. No,
Hmm.
a running race, who finishes first? I mean, that's very objective. You know,
Right.
that's definitely a sport. And then even like a football game, who scores, who wins at the end. It's
Yeah.
black. It's pretty black and white. However, you might argue that Messi or Ronaldo, the way that they play with the ball is an art form. The way that
Yeah.
they probably draw energy from the audience and they like their showman, it's a performance art for them. And anyone who's followed those great athletes would certainly describe the way they move as very artistic and the way they play the game.
Right.
Um, I actually quite like to ask whether their perception of the game is more artistic as well, because that's where I'm sort of coming from here. It's like the overarching question is, well, why does it matter if it's a sport or an art? Like, who cares? Let's just go surfing. Well, I think for a lot of people, especially me, sport is often defined, and I grew up playing sport, but it was always competitive sport. So the
Yeah.
definition of sport for me has an element of competitiveness, even though the Oxford Dictionary definition of it doesn't include that. For me, it's sort of, I always think of sport as something that's competitive, whether that's an individualistic sport where you might be just competing against yourself when you're practicing or whatever. But when you approach surfing or anything with an artistic perspective, then it becomes, no, well, this is creative. And you know,
Yeah.
instead of three to the beach, why don't, because I used to think of surfing, like, even though I wasn't in a competition, I used to think of surfing was, I want to rip the wave and three to the beach, and sort of had these WSL speed, power, flow sort of outside influences on the way I should surf. And you're watching surfing videos and you're surfing the latest shortboard, and it was very much a sporting activity. And then when I sort of changed my perspective and thought of it, no, it's an art. It's, for me, it's just becoming one with the wave, and approached it
Yeah.
from a more artistic perspective. I think a couple of things happened. I just enjoyed it more. There was less pressure. But actually
Yeah.
started becoming more in flow and actually surfing with the wave better.
Yeah. It's funny, if you were to open a surf magazine from, I don't know, 1966 or 7, the same exact conversations were happening, because I might be misquoting him, but I believe it was Nat Young at some point, you know, he and the crew, a lot of crew were pulling back from competition. And they were, like, you look at the film Evolution and that sort of late 60s period, they were going to the farm and they were pulling back from putting the jersey on and having these discussions, is pursuing and pushing surfing as a competitive sport a mistake? Are we forcing something upon a pursuit that's more akin to a performance art? I believe that's what he called it, was performance art, which would be closer to traditional dance, because at that time, let's just say late 60s, early 70s, the equipment hadn't gone anywhere near what it is now. I mean, sure, in cartoons and dreams, they were imagining flying through the air. I'm sure people were, but that wasn't happening until late 70s, early 80s, where people started like getting really above the lip and then leaving uh, and taking orbit. So you can really just think about it as, yeah, performance art. And then competitive surfing and the sport of surfing really disappeared for a number of years through the early 70s into the mid 70s. By and large, the majority of the surfing world wasn't participating in it. You look at surf magazines, they weren't pushing it super hard. But in the mid 70s, the board started getting more performance focused. And you could argue what came first. Was it the competition that drove design, which increased the performance of the boards? Because in the mid 70s, they're shrinking the boards from those Brewer single fin shapes, which were pretty limiting. People were riding eggs in the early 70s. Those were actually a lot more maneuverable than the Dick Brewer style boards that were popular because of Jerry Lopez. Jerry Lopez was God, and everyone wanted to surf like Jerry, even if it was waist high, wherever you were. It could be waist high Malibu, and people were riding 7-foot Lopez guns, which was absurd.
Hmm.
And so everything was style focused. It was still for sure art. But I think there was a fork in the road, so to speak. By mid to late 70s, professional surfing was becoming a thing. The bronzed Aussies, Sean Thompson, we don't have to give a history lesson here, but astute listeners know that story. And so surf brands are emerging and they're trying to sell product, and they sort of align themselves behind these elite, quote, surfer athletes. And the type of surfing they were doing, Shane Horan, you can go down the list of people. And then eventually Tom Curran, Martin Potter, Barton Lynch, they were getting in as many maneuvers as they could because they were being judged in a competition. They were trying to win something. It was this objectified sport, but it was still subjective. So it was always, no one was ever totally happy, but it was still being pushed toward a sport. And to get better, to win, to be a champion, you had to keep pushing performance, more maneuvers, more radical. And then you had the other people who said, the hell with that. That is counter to what they believed in surfing. And that would be your Jim Banks. It would be the Wayne Lynch. It would be these sort of people that really stayed far from competition, pursued surf travel, and they kept that idea of it being an art alive. And we're still having those discussions. We still, on one side of things now, we have Michael February, for example, and there's a whole list of people, although even to like Brendan Margison, Margot, who's like my age in his early 50s, incredible surfing. There's nothing on that side of things that are remotely related to competition. And I think everybody associates what they are doing at purely as art. I don't think anyone, I'd be happy to hear who thinks that is sport. And then we go back to our WSL example. You got the jersey, you got Jack Robinson, Joao Chianca, go down the whole list of people, and it feels like sport to me. So it's interesting that we have two sides of it, and then ultimately whoever's listening or whoever's surfing, and they sort of make a choice. And I don't know, maybe is there a hybrid version of that? What would the hybrid be? I don't even know what you would call that, but
I guess it depends on. I just think surfing is a sport for a very small percentage of surfers. It's the competitive ones. And then, ironically, when they're surfing outside of competition, and even when they're on a wave in a competition, it's still very much artistic. And like you said, I think performance art is a great definition. And Kelly Slater I've heard him define surfing as a martial art. It's simply because in martial arts, you are playing with an outside force, and in surfing it's a performance art, but at the same time you're also you want to get as close to the most powerful part of the wave as well. So
right.
in waves of consequence, at least you're messing with danger.
Well, yeah, and I don't know. I don't have the definition of martial arts in front of me, but does it go on? Is there any other part of that where it involves like inflicting pain or damage? Because one side of surfing in the 80s when I was growing up, you wanted to rip and lacerate and destroy the wave, which is really funny.
Yeah.
I think Brad Black's talked about this before. I feel like I've heard him mention this, and how that's one way to look at it, and the other is to have the surfing complement the wave. It's not to take away from it or to destroy it, like going off the bottom and then
Mm.
taking the board so that you're throwing as much spray in the air. It could be like I'm smashing that wave. I'm ripping, I'm tearing, I'm shrouping, lacerating. And
Mm.
where go back to Michael February or Margot or any of those sorts of Rostovich, there's a complementary nature of the lines they choose, and you never feel like they're destroying something or ripping it. I'm not here to say what's right or wrong. It's just interesting.
Mm.
Because I never thought about martial arts, so I'm just kind of thinking that through out loud. Because there are
Mm.
types of martial arts that are more in, like, I assume Tai Chi is a type of martial arts. I think, pretty sure it is. But that's just like this beautiful movement. Kung Fu has beautiful movement. Um, but you use that outside force of nature to technically to defend yourself. Um, I guess if you're at Teahupu, I don't know how to pronounce that. Everyone pronounces it different. Chopu. Um, that could kill you.
Oh yeah.
With pipeline.
Yeah.
Oof, scary stuff.
Yeah, but its intention is not to. Whereas in martial arts, if you're in a fight, someone's intention is to hurt you. Although, in martial arts, when you're practicing martial arts in a dojo with friends, the intention isn't to hurt at all. It's to practice the art and to learn to flow with, but then when you turn martial arts into a competition, say judo in the Olympic judo, the guy's maybe not trying to literally break your arm, but he wants to win. He wants to, hurting you's kind of part of that. So I think there's a sort of a subtle difference there between you sparring with a friend in order to become better so that you can defend yourself in a bad situation, or you're in a judo competition, you want to, air quotes, kill the other person.
Right. Yeah.
But I guess you've got different approaches. I mean, you think of Pancho Sullivan's very much ripping and shredding the wave and, fast changes of direction and at the apex of the curve, which throws a lot of spray. But then you also look at Rob Machado, and smooth as you like, fast, but he also throws a hell of a lot of spray. And you could argue that he's ripping the wave, but he's just doing it in a graceful way, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree. And a lot of, I don't know if it's a lot of times, but I'll often hear people describe, but maybe we talked about this before, but that idea of that surfer's stylish. And did we talk about that before?
Yes. Yep.
Stylish.
Style. Yep.
It belies the actual ripping going on, because sometimes that low bottom turn or that really coiled up cutback that's really smooth and flowing. Yeah, it is a type of ripping, and it is pretty difficult to do. But you're still leaning toward artistry over sport. I know when I was at the World Surf League, especially with because I was there to work on longboard surfing. I feel like longboard surfing can sometimes be more challenging to be a sport because it's a lot of this movement up and down the board. And since it, through like the Joel Tudor influence and cultural influences, it started leaning more toward a traditional longboard judging criteria. I would have this conversation in my head, like, are we at odds with ourselves? Like, we're trying to judge this thing. We're trying to make as objective as possible, but it's impossible because one judge can view somebody because style's in the criteria, where in performance shortboarding, it's not in the criteria. It can create some interesting challenges. Like, it's not easily identified as a sport. So I tried to explain to the judges, I wasn't a judge, but I was just sort of leading the whole crew and giving guidance on how are we going to make this interesting? How are we going to judge it as fair as possible? And I would use dance competitions as sort of a guideline. And I think everyone agrees that, like, those beautiful dancers doing tango, salsa, you name the dance, like that is for sure art. I mean, it's just incredible form and beauty. And they're throwing numbers out on that, and it's all subjective. So it was always this kind of it was this difficult thing of, are we judging a sport or are we judging performance art? And it was helpful for judges that were shortboard judges that didn't have a lot of experience with longboard surfing to step back and see it less as a competitive sport, because it's a bit more straightforward with shortboarding. There still is a subjective nature to it, but when you don't have to lean on style, it's not written in the book. I'm sure some judges factor style in, but they're going above and beyond what's in the parameters of the rule book. So it's just an interesting observation. And in the end, I think we got there by having those conversations about being open to this, leaning more toward art, which we're a sports league. We were at a sports league.
Yeah, I think that's a good conversation to have because it's important. There are a lot of similarities with dance. Like if you're judging a tango competition, well, the music they're playing is apt. First of all, it would look strange if they were dancing to heavy metal. It wouldn't be appropriate, the what they're wearing, right? And then that in terms of them being stylish, their movements are smooth, controlled, and in time with the other person and the music. And
Yeah,
that's
it's the style a lot of times is the balance of form with the movement, so that the form is never like a martial art. It's never working against the movement. You can't imagine a black belt in any martial art where their arms are like going the wrong way. It's just not, it would be really awkward looking. And it's the same with surfing, and so the form, the function will follow the form. And if they have really good form, the surfing it will a lot of times be beautiful. Where I feel like tube rides are a good way to sort of like force pretty decent style. Like it's pretty apparent if you have awful style if you're in a barrel.
mm,
But a good amount of surfers can kind of pull it together and get that crouch down and sort of get the hands just right inside the barrel. But if they're like bent over, legs are sort of straightish and they're bent over at the waist and sort of looking down at the board, oof, ow, it's really obvious that style's way off, form's way off. It's definitely not artistic.
yeah, and the wave's going to hit you in the butt anyway.
Yeah,
Because
you're gonna be in big trouble.
yeah, yeah, and it's also it's so. I guess it's also you got to surf back to surfing. You got to surf appropriately to the waves that you're surfing. So essentially, you're in rhythm with the ocean, and also the surfboard that you choose to ride as well. Which is like someone actually meant because our last conversation was about style, which kind of
Yeah.
weaves nicely into this conversation. And there was a comment on YouTube. Someone said, "Oh, someone said you didn't enforce or put enough weight to the origin of the word style, which comes from stylus, which
Mm,
is your pen. As right, they had a certain writing style, and of course, it was the words you wrote, but also your handwriting and what
yeah.
and the quality of the fountain pen or whatever type of pen that you chose to use as well." So I thought that was really
Great
interesting,
point.
and which leads us into the surfboard. So I think
Mhm.
that that's going to determine a lot of your style. And if you're going out on a performance shortboard, people are going to look at you more like a sports person. But if you're out there on a beautiful log and you're going for, you know, form and style, you're going to be seen as more of an artist as well, actually.
Yeah, I'd say that is probably a general rule. Once upon a time, style was really, I think we're about close to the same age. So I grew up idolizing, looking at people like Tom Curran in the 80s and 90s and peak Tom Curran, early 90s, the beautiful search films. Um, and then on the shortboard side of things, again, it comes back, competition and sport has driven the departure to get away from style because not in the criteria. There's a
Mm,
focus on high performance maneuvers, but there's a return to that. And in over the years, there's been people sort of in there, but like a Joel Parkinson, um, who would get underscored because he looked too smooth, which was
mm,
interesting.
mm,
And then I think Ethan Ewing is a great example in recent times that the judges really react to it. The surf fans, if you follow the WSL, certainly you know that he's got a huge following. He's a favorite on all the podcasts that you and I listen to. Everybody kind of sees him as a return to form, which is really quite nice. I think that's awesome. But at the end of the day, there's still no word, or you're not required to factor in style into the criteria. So it's interesting when you look at it's not in the criteria, but clearly the style and the form is factoring into the score because he's doing these really radical maneuvers, but really polished, really beautiful form. No arms waving, everything's low and compressed, like a Tom Curran or Rostovich, but 2 or 3x, like more. like faster and more explosive and more corked out and twisted. But generally speaking, I think it's true what you're saying, that you could associate that the average sort of stuff you're seeing out there, whether it's competition or just your local lineup, there's not a real focus on the art or style. And because the board lends itself to pumping and ripping and sort of being in and out of proper trim, the there's not that stability to have that good form for some, maybe a lot of people.
Mm.
But then on a log or a longboard or a mid length, it's more stable. The board's more in the water. You're not lifting it and pumping it and getting it out of the water as much. So you've got a more stable foundation to kind of work out. You're not under that sort of stress and pressure of making a board work going down the line and then getting to the different parts of the wave with ease. So I think it's true that a general rule could be for the average person that the board is going to have a big impact on your presentation. Well, the form, but just the way the rest of us see the way you're riding the wave. Again, we're not surfing to make other people happy or to please other people, I think, but good form, it feels great when you're surfing. It's just like swinging a bat. You hit the ball and you connect, or I don't play golf, but you get like a perfect swing. I know my friends that golf, so there's nothing like that feeling. You just know that drive is going way down the field and it's going right where you want it to go. I think that's good form, right? And then surfing, good form when you get a great bottom turn or a great cutback and everything comes together. It feels awesome. And byproduct of that is your friends might give you a hoot or a holler in the channel.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, labeling it as an art doesn't take away from the fact that we want to get better at all. I mean, any musician who's played music is definitely an art form, and if you want to get better, you got to practice. You practice, you learn music theory, you practice in your bedroom by yourself. You might do it for hours and hours, and in order to do one jam with a band and have that be artistic.
Yeah.
So it definitely doesn't take away with our desire to get better, and certainly to get better for ourselves, not for some competition or how we look, just because it's awesome to do that. I think just the simple fact is the better you are at surfing, the better it feels.
Yeah. It's serious fun. You're,
Yeah.
you know, because sometimes the word art could, in some people's mind, could communicate a lack of seriousness. Like hey, this thing doesn't matter. It's a pointless pursuit. There's nothing to be really taken that seriously. You'll run into surfers who will maybe they'll drop in on you or collide with you and go like, "Hey, man, take it easy. Like we're just having fun. Don't take it so seriously." It's like, well, a lot of us that have sort of dedicated our lives to it, we take the serious part of it is the practice, like the guy or girl on the guitar. They're hours a day. They're taking it seriously, but they're having a good time, and they're practicing over and over, just like someone in a martial arts jiu-jitsu studio. That's hours and hours of training. We're doing that as well. We don't get as much practice at it because we're paddling so much and sitting a lot. It's actually quite precious the amount of time we get on the board. That's why, back to the very beginning of the conversation, it just takes a long time. That's why
Mm.
it's hard for kids. It's a lot of patience, a lot of understanding, and moving through the ocean. And then when you actually get up and ride a wave, it's just a small fraction of your time in the ocean.
Yeah. That's, I mean, what happens between when the surfboard is under your arm and under your feet, that's the hardest part of surfing.
It depends how many people are talking to you in the lineup, how many sets you miss while they're talking to you about their real estate deal. You're like, let's surf. We
Yeah.
just let's get back. Let's have some serious fun. That's what I always have seen surfing as like, yeah, and And I think, yeah, just like what I was saying earlier, sometimes the idea that being an art, I've talked to people who take like, these are professional surfers, people that dedicate their life to it. And I'm explaining to them that it's an art or a dance. And some of these surfers didn't like that. They thought that
Hmm.
it eroded or diminished the importance or the seriousness of what they were doing. They're like thinking to themselves, like, well, I train and like I go to the gym and I run and I do all these things so that I can be stronger and surf better. And like art just sounds like something you do, like you're doodling in a notepad, and it just is a pointless endeavor. So for some people, there's a disconnect with the idea of art. We're clearly all not on the same page on this because a lot of WSL fans, I'd be willing to bet, would say that it is a sport. They do think it's an art, but if they had to choose, they're cheering for people with jerseys. People that aren't into the WSL would take your stance because earlier you said, well, I think maybe more people would see it as um, an art than a sport. But I obviously we don't have the data on that. It'd be maybe you should do a survey.
I
Let's
did.
find
I did a small one
out.
on Instagram. It was about 75-25. So more art, but obviously that's a small. That's my listeners. Of course, if you're talking to competitive surfers, or even those who grew up as competitive surfers when they were younger, and that
Yeah,
probably shaped their attitude when even if they're not competing anymore.
right.
But I think
Yeah,
taking it seriously and training and that doesn't mean it's not an art form. I mean, gosh, Neil Young has a nutritionist and a personal trainer, and do you know what I mean? Like he wants to look after himself so that he
right,
can perform his art.
right. Yeah,
That's so you can
yeah. I'm with you on that.
still take art seriously.
No, I was only sharing that because I'm not saying that there's a lot of people that think that way, but I was a little surprised how, when you can feel the shift in the energy of somebody who's not liking what you're saying. They're
Oh
like,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and I had to kind of talk through it and like, well, no, it's not really the same, like a fine painter or a jazz musician clearly is an artist, but
Mm,
just had to kind of like rethink that aspect of it that yeah, it can be an art and you can also take it pretty serious.
yeah, yeah. Well, I asked Donald Brink the same question, and he was very much in the art camp. And
Sure,
yeah, I mean,
absolutely.
and of course that segues into like when he shapes a board, it's an art piece, you know. And I think you guys at Channel Islands would agree is that there's a lot of passion and thought and care that goes into not just how the boards perform, but how they look and their longevity and all sorts. It's very much an art
Right.
an art form. And I want to talk about the new surfboard, but I want to ask you one question before we talk about boards, which we touched on it, that we spend most of our time in the water, trying to read the ocean, look for waves, and paddling around.
Sure.
Have you got any tips for people choosing the right waves and reading the ocean, wave
Oh
selection?
my gosh. That's a interesting one because I use a lot of good surfers use lineups. So when I get to a new break and I don't know what's going on, it's definitely no art involved. It's just more like physics and science now. We're putting on the Cliff Capono brain and looking at things from a scientific, like naturalist point of view, where surfers study, I think we study patterns. We don't think about it, but hunters, surfers, scientific observers, bird watchers, they study patterns. And so when you arrive to the new break, you're, let's say you don't have a friend there, you have no idea. The old days before the internet told us everything to do, um, we'd have to figure it out. And you just start watching and observing the patterns to see what's going on with the bottom and making a guess on sort of sometimes the safety of it, because you could be somewhere that's like a slab that's a bit frightening. But if it looks, you can usually tell right away if it's a user friendly wave. So then once you've established that, okay, this is a safe place to surf. Maybe I don't see any fins, so I'm like, okay, there's also hopefully no sharks. And then you get out, and I use lineups. I quickly establish 2 points on the beach. And it's like the two fingers there. It's like with these two fingers, I'll see two palm trees and I'll see a set come in. And the first thing I do is I look over my shoulder and I look in and I find 2 points and I observe about how far apart they are. And then I'll look at the second and third wave and I'll look in. And if they're still kind of happening in the same spot, I'm like, oh, okay, we're sort of in a zone. And then I'll move around and try to find if I can get one of those, another object to actually line up with it. If I can't find something to perfectly line up, then I'll get used to like, okay, there's about that much space between those trees. So if there's this much space, I know I'm like, way off. If it's like over here now, if it's like crossed over and gone the other way, I'm way off. So I study the pattern. That I don't think there's any art to it. I just think if you have good eyesight, you have to use it and have good recall. So, not everybody has good recall. You see something happen and then you notice the pattern of it happening again and what has changed. Where did that thing that's happening move, or did it come in the exact same place? So that's what I'm doing. I'm triangulating. I mean, there's absolutely nothing new with that.
Mm.
But a lot of surfers, I think, don't use that. I'm not an expert of surfing around Kelly Slater, but the few times I've surfed next to him, I'm not his buddy or anything. I noticed that he does the same thing I do. I'm looking over my shoulder all the time. It's not because I'm worried about someone kicking my ass or that I cut someone off, because that could be a reason to look over your shoulder. Like, um, it's I'm continuously interested, am I in the right position? And I surf a lot of crowded breaks. So switching from like a new break, like I'm trying to figure that pattern out and establish it. That's like the first thing, the most important thing I do. Um, at home where it's really crowded, I'm trying to understand the movements of the crowd with the current and where everybody's at. Because when the sets come, I want to, if, unless I'm a visitor and it's not a break, it's not like my home break or something. I want to be on the top three waves if it's my home break. If I'm visiting somewhere, I know I'm not going to get the top three waves. I mean, unless you want to be hated and everyone to hate you in the lineup, you're visiting, you don't grab the set waves. But you can still, even if you're looking for scraps and leftovers, you still want to be aware of where you are and knowing that triangulation. So it's like if I'm on a spot like Malibu and Alan Sarlo, Andy Lines, the Marshall brothers, like all these people that surf there regularly, they're going to get those waves. But I still want to know where I am so that once those flurry of waves have come through and there's a few leftovers, those top dogs are out of the way. But I've ensured that I'm not way too far into the channel. I'm still deep enough in a good spot where theoretically, I mean, it is Malibu, you're going to get dropped in on. You would be in pole position. So it's kind of interesting that I spend almost as much time looking out to sea as I do looking in.
Mm. Yeah. No,
A
that's a
bit
great
obsessive, maybe.
that's a great point. And not only does triangulation help you stay from where you are, because that's where the waves are breaking from, but it also makes sure that you're in the same spot to take all the observations as well, which I
Sure.
think is important for getting to know the break and the patterns. You never
Yeah.
you want to be a static observer, because
Yeah.
yeah,
And there's,
on some swells it's a different period. They're actually breaking. I usually sit here, but they're breaking over there. So at least you know where you are and where you usually sit. And now this is a unique swell, or it's a different period. It's breaking over there, and you've got a new triangulation or a new observation. So there's lots of
yep.
reasons to triangulate.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. I don't know if I answered your question. I mean, it was
definitely.
that idea of what do you do when you get out there? And And then there's also, you see a lot of people who don't really do any of those things and they do just fine. I'm probably just overthinking it.
Well, they probably,
But I don't know. I like the idea of trying to hone in on it. I feel like really good surfers that are getting some of the best waves really understand that where they are. They do look in.
I think you also get to a point at a break where you don't have to triangulate as much because you just know, oh, there's a boil there, whether you're conscious of it or not. You just
Yeah,
kind of know where you are
totally.
in a
Yeah,
lineup. You get an intuitive
yeah,
sense for your positioning at a certain place. Um,
yeah.
are you always just scanning the horizon, looking for the next set? You want to see the set first, or are you
I
often
do
la la
because the
land?
waves. I do because the waves in Southern California a lot of times are pretty inconsistent compared to other parts of the world. There's some pretty big lulls. South swells especially, you can have 10, 15-minute lulls of the really bomber waves. So yeah, I think so. And just trying to see, yeah, because if people are talking, they're not paying attention. I'll key in on that. I'll notice they're not paying attention. So I'll do a little flutter kick and just sort of move a few inches one way or the other so that while they're not paying attention, I'm just a little bit closer.
Yeah,
I'm not advocating or saying don't take your turn or snake people, but people can kind of work themselves out of the rotation by not paying attention.
yeah, yeah,
Um,
exactly.
it's
Yeah,
funny because like I find it obnoxious and annoying when people talk a lot. I just I think a lot of people agree with this. I don't know if it's a generational thing, but surfing is a place to disconnect. We have these things, we have all kinds of noise all day long, and the ocean's the perfect place. It's like going to a yoga class and everybody's talking. It's like, what? Well, I'll just do this at home. Like, I don't need, this is a place we can be together and we can connect and vibe off each other's energy. I'm not saying don't say hi to people, say hi, hello,
yeah, that's enough.
not, but then like, let's settle in. It's like, it I feel like the surfers in the 60s and 70s, especially, really understood that notion of meditation and just enjoying the quiet parts of surfing, like being okay with the downtime of a 20-minute lull and just sort of sitting there.
Yeah, yeah,
And
I totally agree with that. I used to be confused as to when you try and talk to someone. Sometimes people won't even say hi. They ignore you and just watch the horizon. But then in the car park, they're the nicest, friendliest people you ever meet, and you just got to realize, no, that they're there to watch that. They want to see that set come first. Leave them alone, and you should
yeah,
actually be doing the same thing. Like focus in on the ocean, like read the waves. If you
yeah.
if you're feeling anxious, go in and catch the little ones. Just
Well, you actually get pulled out of the rhythm when I've noticed when a deep conversation takes place, invariably you're pulled out of the rhythm of the ocean. And you miss because as you're talking, those other people do the flutter kicks and they sort of slowly move into position. It
mm,
only takes a matter of inches or feet.
yep,
And shit, 20 minutes, people sort of forget whose turn it is. And if you're not focusing, that can be frustrating. So I'm if I've ever been accused of being rude or too serious in the water, it's because I'm from that old school of be polite, say hi, but it's okay to have like uncomfortable silence. It's like being in a car ride with someone. A lot of people get nervous and uncomfortable if there's more than like 10 seconds of silence.
yep,
And then they force a conversation and think, well, if the person next to me isn't talking to me, they must be mad at me. It's not okay. It's like, no, it's okay. Like just be comfortable being in that silence, that the movie theater thing that says silence is golden.
yep. No,
And
I,
I've had some friends say, dude, that's just way too harsh and extreme. Like you're in an environment where people are expecting to be really social and talk story and whatever, like just jibber jabber. Like, I don't
sometimes,
know.
yeah,
I
sometimes not.
think there's a time and place. Like, yeah, it's like knee high and it's just your buddy. Like, there's no hard and fast rule, but I'm just only bringing this up because it factors into all of these things that are in play when you're in the lineup. You're trying to surf, you're trying to have fun, you're trying to be respectful. You're also trying to catch waves because some people are there to talk. That's great. I love it. Go right ahead and talk all you like. It's actually good ground cover. The more people sitting there talking
Hmm.
and not catching waves, the other people won't paddle out. That's too crowded. There's already 50 people out.
Yeah.
But sometimes you'll find that half that crowd has no interest really in getting that many waves. They just kind of want to be out there.
Yeah.
They'll be happy to get a couple little scraps.
No, exactly. It's a good point. And you certainly don't judge someone's social character based on the way that they sit in the lineup. It's
So,
yeah.
well, somehow there's art involved in what we're talking about.
Oh, definitely.
There's an art, there's an art to the dance of catching a wave. And
Oh, yeah.
the art is how do you catch a wave without everybody hating you?
Um, make it look easy would be
Mhm.
part of it, which is artistic in a way.
Yeah.
Be respectful. Some people get away with it. Yeah, it's a tricky
Well,
combi.
it probably has all the answers in those self-help books of like how to have people like you. There's just things you do, right? You wait, you're patient, you take your turn speaking in a room, you look people in the eye, like all these sorts of things. And that sort of can factor into surfing. Now, if you're at like a hardcore, loped out spot where no one, like everyone's mad you're there, no matter who you are and what you've done, that's a different story. But on your sort of average run of the mill surf break that's very well known, it's not a coveted secret spot.
Mm,
Uh, I always find it interesting how you kind of the art of moving through that lineup and finding yourself on a wave.
yeah.
It's satisfying in a way when you've figured out that it's almost like the satisfaction of being on a hunt, which is like a human, it's built into us, whether you're a vegan or not, it's built into us to hunt.
Hmm.
Maybe you're just hunting for berries.
Yeah.
Some are hunting for, an elk.
Yep.
But
Yeah.
there's something satisfying about the chase and like how you get there and the
Mm,
kind of the game plan of like human beings for as long as we know that we've been here on this planet would work together and kind of
yeah.
elk. Maybe not so much when you're getting berries. Um, and then surfing, we're all chasing the same elk, but in the end, only one of us wants to get it. So who gets the elk?
Mm.
Interesting dynamic
There's lots
there.
of elk out there though. Yeah, there's definitely there's a combination of reading the ocean and reading the room.
Sure.
Surfing in a lineup, and there is an element of like catching the wave or hunting the wave for sure. But I think once you're in a position where you're just about to join the wave, then it's more about accepting the invitation to dance than it is catching the wave.
Sure.
Mm.
That's
And
a
I
good
think
way to
that's
put
a
it.
more artistic way of looking at it as well. It's,
Right.
it's often the way I coach people as well that are struggling to catch waves. Is like, well, change your perspective. Don't just hunt down the waves and try and catch the wave because you end up sort of you being less efficient with your movements. If you're just accepting the invitation to dance and your dance partner's playing hard to get, then it sort of gives a different perspective on catching waves.
Yeah. If you want to get really woo-woo on this, what about I don't understand how this stuff works, but some people will call it the law of attraction. If you tap into the energy, like the energy we have as a human and what we attract. Um, for example, if we're negative, low vibration, thinking about how bad everything is and how bad people are and that everyone's out to get you, it's really interesting that that stuff just finds its way to you more and more. the person that looks at things with a more positive, optimistic outlook, great things seem to find their way. Now, there's exceptions to that, of course. There's really great people that do that and get struck with cancer, unfortunately. But I think by and large, there's a rule there. And with catching waves and attracting waves, if you're like, oh, it's crowded, I can't, you know, you see people do that in the lineup and it just gets worse for them.
Yep.
They're the ones who get in an argument. They're picking a fight with somebody where the patient people that are just really optimistic and believers that the wave's going to come to them, it comes to them. And then there's the other really amazing ones that I've always scratched my head. I've surfed with this guy, Victor Bernardo, not that long ago. If you don't know who he is, look him up. Phenomenal surfer. Wherever he would go, the waves would be. And I've seen Mikey February do this. I've seen Tom Curran. I've surfed with Tom Curran. I watched it happen. Joel Tudor. It's more than just knowledge.
Mm.
There's some belief system there that is added into. Yes, they have the knowledge, but I mean, this happened to Britt Merrick not that long ago at Rincon. Britt Merrick grew up at Rincon, knows it better than just as well as any top local, right? Mikey February is sitting next to him, and Mikey's having a great session, and Britt's like, "Hey, Mikey, sit here. This is the spot." And Mikey's really polite. Oh, okay, Britt. And just a few minutes later, Britt sees out of the corner of his eye, Mikey just keeps paddling deeper, like another 150 feet to this kind of area that pretty tough to make unless you caught the wave up top and you came into it at Mach 20. And then if you take off where Mikey is, you might get caught behind. And so you sort of like sit where Britt and most of the people sit. And Mikey gets the wave of the day.
Yeah.
And it's like, how? It did these things and came to him in a way that didn't make sense to even the most knowledgeable local. I don't know what that means. Maybe a really somebody who understands how the universe works could explain that to me. But there's something about, is it his belief? Is he lucky? Is he just that good that he figured out a break that he hardly surfed? He'd only barely ever surfed Rincon before that.
But he's also put a lot of time in, and a lot of, there's a lot, these surfers that we see as magical and so good have actually put a lot of time and effort. And I actually think, I remember surfing with Nathan Hedge at North Narrabeen, but everyone's sitting there, and then Nathan starts paddling like an animal, and everyone's like, well, I was like, what are you paddling for? And then 5 seconds later, everyone else sees the set and starts paddling. He just saw the set before everyone else. He just had a hyper focus on that sliver of ocean, or maybe it was an instinct thing just from his experience, or his pattern recognition is on a deeper level than us. So he saw a glint of a set further out the back than anyone else, or maybe there is a logical way to explain it, or maybe it is a bit more woo-woo, or I'm not sure either. It's interesting. But yeah, with the time we spend sitting there waiting and watching the ocean is a big part of it. And of course, what we sit on, what we choose to sit on is a big part of it. You see over my left shoulder here, do you recognize who might have shaped that board?
Is that a Wayne Rich?
It is a Wayne Rich. It's a harmonic.
It's a harmonic.
Harmonic 67. It is.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a stringer configuration he likes to do. I think part of his stringer influence is from Reniator. So there's a little, those that know Reniator, there's sort of like a little nod to him with that stringer, those stick choices. And that's a great model. I've ridden it. It's awesome.
Yeah. That's a 9.8. And you guys at Channel Islands have recently collaborated with Wayne. Can you tell us why Wayne, and what brought that on, and what was the outcome?
Speaking of artists and artistry, Wayne would 100% be on that side of the equation. Wayne is an artist. He's really into sacred geometry and really spiritual living. He feels things deeply. So I think a lot of us that know him, that's why we're attracted to him, because he's that passionate. He does take things seriously. I've been at Channel Islands, which I was just talking to my wife last night. I couldn't believe how long I've been working with Channel Islands. I came here in 2018. I'm like, wow. You ever have those moments where you just have, there's these timestamps where you started something, a friendship, a project, a relationship, and it's the things that go by that quick. It's usually you're enjoying them. It's when you're in living hell that things drag on and take forever. So that's, I think, a good indication that we're having a really great time here. And I've ridden a lot of different boards. I rode Takeyamas growing up for a long, long time. Unfortunately, he passed away a little over a decade ago, close to 15 years ago, pretty soon here. And then I rode some friends' boards, Tyler Hatzikian, Thomas Beckson, and a few others. I was just sort of like a countryless. Didn't really, just kind of went and bought boards from whoever I was. Skip Fry, got into those for a while. Um, the gliders. He calls them big boards. Other people call them gliders,
Ah,
which is another story for another time.
yeah.
Uh, why they're called that. And yeah, and so just being here, we did the mid, and then some of the guys would give me a hard time. They would see me riding these other boards that I just mentioned. Yeah, just a little like, oh, are you on a CI? I'm like, well, we have, there hasn't been a new longboard design at CI in like 20 some years. They made a bunch of them in the 90s and early 2000s. They had this Mikey DeTemple and others, so even Rob Machado had one, and so they for sure had a go at it, but they sort of just leveled out. And long story short, selfishly, I wanted a board that the guys wouldn't give me a hard time on, and it had some Channel Islands on it. And so talked to Britt Merrick, and it's, he's like, hey, this isn't in my wheelhouse. It's just not where he's at. He wouldn't even know where to begin. But he talked about Wayne Rich being somebody who he's a friend of the community. Britt's known him since he was a teenager. And so it was like this perfect fit. We're here in Carpinteria. Wayne's a Rincon regular and been in this 805 zone for many decades. And so, yeah, we just got together and we had a chat about what we wanted to do. So we made a board called the CI Log, which came out 2 years ago. And then this newest one we just came out with a few weeks ago. It's called the CI Nose Rider. Sounds like a lazy name, but it does exactly what the name says it does. So the log was a Australian style, what we call like people call it involvement style. It's where you're really moving around in the pocket. It's more of a dance. It's not just hanging out on the nose all day and just standing up there. It's full tip to tail movement. And then the nose rider is geared more toward anyone that just wants to hang out on the nose. It's a great, like a Malibu, any point break, someone who's really hyper focused on the nose, kind of like an air board. It's like, you want to do an air, get the neck beard too, or whatever model that is focused on that. And then I think the coolest part about it is just Wayne, the decades of experience and connecting with someone who's that real. I mean, you have his board. He's just like the ultimate underground character. He's just been this guy that never had aspirations to blow up and be the biggest thing. And so I think we all feel real lucky that he was open to the idea of collaborating. And he has a lot of respect for Channel Islands. So it was just like a perfect fit. I mean, I could bore you to tears about all the details of the board, but I think at the end of the day, it's a work of art that is very functional and makes nose riding easier. And then our friends at True Ames, who are now they moved to Carpinteria, they're just down the street. Chuck Ames is over there and Troy Mothershead. And they made a fin that goes with it. And we had a nice fin in it, but when we were done with the process of making a fin that complements a board specifically, that's a really fun process. We did tried like almost a dozen different fins. It was over a number of months and made a few versions. And then it made the board nose ride even better. So It's really noticeable if I don't have that fin in it. The board still works great, but it just works better. Everybody knows they've got a board at home. If they have the wrong set of fins in it, it's a totally different board. It can almost be like a deal breaker. And then you get in that right set of fins when you're in your board, magic.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Oh,
we've been
awesome.
having some fun with that.
Yeah. So it's the nose rider.
Yeah,
Arguably the best longboard shaper in the world, working with Channel Islands. It's pretty cool.
I I think it'd be hard I don't think a lot of people would argue with that. It was he's won the he's won that Icons of Foam shape off. He's he was just in a recent one, he was just in the final. He pretty much won it according to most people. We don't get in those details, but another contest.
Yep.
See, trying to make a contest out of an art, which is shaping surfboards. Really funny, isn't it?
It is funny. It is funny, guys. There's almost nothing you guys haven't done now. Gosh, I mean, if you could get Skip Fry to do a big board for Channel Islands, you'd have everything in your lineup.
Uh, that's a bridge too far. People might burn a real. People don't like those things. Stay off gliders. They're bad for the lineup. Longboards are bad enough, but I think, you know, it's interesting. Like you don't see as many longboards as you used to. I think not everyone. Let me back up. A lot of people who would have ridden a high performance longboard or a longboard have jumped over to a mid length. I think that's really cool. Where
Mm,
like 10 or 15 years ago, there was a bigger divide. It was high performance shortboards, high performance longboards, or logs, which kind of got popular about 20 years ago after the Tudor, the Seedling, and all that sort of stuff happened. And then, God forbid, you had SUPs. I mean, they were the most hated.
yeah.
Now the most hated might be foilers, but um, so somehow the on that hierarchy of who's who's the most hated, the traditional longboard has kind of maybe gone a rung up the ladder and kind of gained back some ground there. But yeah, this is one of those things that's, it's a timeless beauty, and high performance shortboards, they're always being driven by performance and that Formula One mentality of trying to be one, just whatever that incremental step ahead is of your competition, you'll take it. So those guys, Britt Merrick and that crew, they're always like 32nd of an inch. I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. But Yago Dora the other day, like chipped his fin at J Bay, just barely chipped it. And he kept looking at his fins, and he got out of the water and took that one fin out where any one of regular of us would have just kept surfing,
Hmm.
but he felt it.
Wow,
So those
interesting.
people are like,
Yeah.
yeah. And then with traditional longboards, you don't need as much progression and refinement. So I think with what we're doing, it's like Wayne and I had these ideas. We did about a year and a half of refinement, and it's like, I don't know what else we could do to this board to make it any better. It's insane.
Mm,
That's a cool feeling when you work on a project, whatever it is. You build something, you build a home, you build a piece of art. Um, Knowing that you did all you could to make it the best you could it's like a satisfying feeling.
yeah. Yeah. Yeah, well, it makes sense to have a quiver of boards for different. You might not see logs in the lineup that much, but sometimes the waves is just, yeah, go surfing on a log, or you don't go surfing. Sometimes they're that small and weak that it's nice to have that board, even if you're not a longboarder per se. It's nice to have one of those in your quiver. And
Yeah.
I had a thought. I don't know if there's any merit to it, but if if for example you had let's say you had 10 surfboards ranging from performance shortboards all the way through to a longboard, if all of those surfboards were from the same manufacturer, would you have the consistency of the materials and the curing time and the sanders that would give some sort of that would make those boards sort of gel together better in a way?
I don't know if that's true. I think what holds things together is like a rocker profile. So like if you have a family of boards that share a similar rocker, but you can't really ever do that when you're going the full range. You're
Mm,
never going to have that with a short board all the way to a log. They're just so different. So I
yeah.
like what you're thinking but Maybe someone could argue that that's the case, but over that stretch of a board, so much is changing. Just if you have a great rocker, you can have a great board, even if you botch the rail, I think. And but going from a performance shortboard to a log, something that has a really hard, refined edge, to something with no edge, um, no, I don't think so. But if you get it from the same shaper who can do that for you, they're going to know you as the surfer and learn who you are. So I think from that sense, you could work with whoever your shaper is and get a complete quiver. The problem with that, I just, from my experience, is most shapers, um, they often build things that they love and are passionate about. And it's really rare that you find somebody that can build a high performance shortboard and a log. Like I
Yeah.
think like I remember running into a guy years ago named Tim Stamps, who's down in uh, Newport. And Tim's one of those guys, I think, who can build a performance shortboard, a fish, a mid-length. That's a really cool skill set to have. In our case at Channel Islands, we just have like a crew of talented people, so we're kind of lucky. It's like a good baseball team or something. It's got a stable of really talented people. And that's kind of fun, getting a band together that could like substitute in different band members for
Mm.
like different types of music. I think that's really fun, and it keeps us engaged like every day. It's really fun to go to work when there's more ideas than what you can execute on.
The CI nose rider, any tips in terms of what size you order? Is there any rules around
No,
that?
but I think general rules of longboards. I think if you go around no less than 3.5 feet over your height is not a bad place to be. You wouldn't want to go less than that. But a lot of times you won't find longboards that are under 9 feet unless it's custom made. We had our friends in Japan that we made some for ordered 8/8s, which was, I thought, an interesting size
Hmm.
because a lot of them are like 5'6",
Mm.
5'4",
Yeah.
the small frame people. The common body type's a bit smaller in Japan. So, but I think, I'm 6'1", I'm riding a 9'8", 9'10".
Yep.
I probably could be riding a 10-footer,
Yeah.
but I would say I would never go less than the minimum is like have it be at least 3.5 feet over your head. So you have that proportionality to get really good nose riding. It's hard to get insane nose rides on a short one. You can hang five on like an 8-footer if a guy my size could. It would be really challenging to hang 10 on it.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah. Yeah.
need the proportion of how the hydrodynamics and like how water needs to come up over the deck and
Mm.
the length of where the tail of the board is to where you are in the pocket. If it's a shorter distance, you can't physically get the board up and elevated and stuck in the wave face. I'm sure a physics major could explain it, but
Yeah.
I can just tell you in practice, it's really difficult to do. But you could do it with your feet a little further apart. You
Yeah.
could get a really nice five.
Yeah.
Um, Hanging 10 on an 8-foot board, a guy my size would be tough, but I weigh almost 200 pounds.
Mm. Yeah. Well, I'm
Uh,
I'm 5'11" and a half, and I'm 180 pounds, 80 kilos, and that's a 9'8" that Wayne recommended. So we're kind of
that's a
um,
great,
yeah. And
great group.
I've got a 9'3" as well longboard. I struggle
Yeah.
to nose ride that. It's too small. So there's a couple of guidelines for those out there who are wondering.
Yeah. That would be too small. You can't get in enough steps. It's like you can get like 2 or 3 steps, and a guy your size will find that like if I had another 6 inches, I could get in that extra step. You're almost in it puts you in an awkward position. Even if you could, once you get to the nose, you could physically hang 10 on a board that size, but the steps will feel a little bit off to you. The rhythm of that dance would feel like a 9'7" for me. I'm 6'0" and a half. I love taking credit for half. Uh, Come back in a few years, I'll be shrunk to 6. But I remember on 9.6s and 7s, I would always just kind of have this weird last bit of the run to the nose. And then when I went to 9.9, it sounds ridiculous. It was only a few inches, but it was just enough to iron all that out. And the surfing and the footwork got smoother. It was less kind of choppy because I would see myself going to the nose and then I would have to shorten or widen the step depending on what was happening
Yep.
to get that foot placement.
Yep.
So I think if you're 6 foot and you're going for a nose rider, you are 9.8, 9.10. You could go 10.0. If you're like 5.8, 5.9, you're probably a 9.4 to 9.6 person.
Yep.
You're below that. Let's say you're like 5.4 to 5.6, you're like a 9.2 or 9.0.
Yep. Some good advice there. Yep.
Rough.
Yep.
This,
And those
there's no rules. These are just guidelines.
exactly. Surfing has no rules. So, if those who are listening who want to learn specifically about nose riding, we can go back to episode 41, which was Devon's original appearance on this podcast, and I just re-released that episode on YouTube. And
Yeah.
I wasn't filming the podcast back then, but Devon kindly sent through some footage, some nose riding and longboarding footage, so you can watch Devon nose ride and longboard surf whilst listening to that conversation, which I sort of recut as well, so it's a little bit shorter, and that's available on YouTube at Surf Mastery on the YouTube channel as well. I have a link to that in the show notes. Devon Howard, thank you so much for coming on again.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, whoever is still with us, and hopefully it made sense.
Well, like you said, it's an age-old conversation, and sport, art, it will continue on. But I think it's an important one to talk about. Thinking about it deeply helped my surfing, my experience of surfing, the way I look at surfing, board choice, those deeper thoughts, those philosophical thoughts that we have about surfing influence our surfing life a lot. So thanks for weighing in. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for thinking of me. We'll hopefully see you soon in the water.
All right. Thanks, Devon. Thanks for tuning in to the Surf Mastery podcast. Make sure you share this episode with a friend and subscribe. And of course, you can go through the back catalogue. All episodes are timeless. And that discount code, if you want the discount code for 15% off any Channel Islands accessories, Devon has said send him a DM on Instagram. Simple as that. Say, hey, Devon, tuned into the latest episode. Keen to get that discount code for Channel Islands accessories. That includes leashes, tail pads, and board bags, all the essentials. Stay tuned, subscribe to the show. Oh, let us know. Do you think surfing is an art or a sport? I'll put a poll up on the Instagram post for this episode as well. And until next time, keep surfing.